All right, let's just jump right into this. I want you to imagine a man whose peak net worth hit an estimated $400 billion in today's money. A man whose single company literally made up nearly 3% of the entire United States economy. I'm talking, of course, about John D. Rockefeller. But how exactly does someone go about building an empire of that sheer magnitude? Well, it turns out his ultimate wealth-building secrets were never published in some corporate manifesto. They're actually hiding in a collection of 38 deeply private letters written exclusively to his son. So, welcome to today's Explainer, where we are going to unlock those exact letters together.
To make this super efficient for you, we've structured this explainer around 5 distinct pillars. We'll start with engineering your own luck, then move into the privilege of work, tackle failure and hardship, enter the absolute battlefield of business, and finally unpack wealth, ethics, and legacy. It's a really fascinating arc that takes us all the way from internal mindset to external empire building.
So, let's kick things off with pillar number 1. Engineering your own luck.
You know, a lot of people just assume the ultra-wealthy stumble into fortunate circumstances, right? That they were simply in the right place at the exact right time. But Rockefeller fundamentally rejected that whole idea. His core belief was, and I quote, "I do not live by God-given luck, but I do so by planning luck." He just didn't see luck as this random, uncontrollable force. He actually used the inventor of the mechanical harvester, Mr. McCormick, as the perfect example. McCormick didn't just invent a machine and cross his fingers hoping for the best. He actively positioned his entire business to capitalize on that innovation. He literally planned his luck, proving that having a well-thought-out strategy absolutely changes your odds of success.
And notice the super clear contrast he draws between two types of people here. On the one hand, you've got the passive individuals. These are the excuse makers who just wait around for the perfect conditions before taking action, which, let's be honest, those conditions never actually arrive. On the other hand, you have the proactive optimists. These are the folks who execute imperfect plans immediately. Rockefeller truly believed that action solves everything. He famously pointed out that the longer you spend aiming, the less likely you are to ever actually pull the trigger.
Moving right along to section 2, the privilege of work.
The Rockefeller executing those plans, the actual daily grind, was not a chore. He saw work as the absolute foundation of all business, prosperity, and personal genius. He actually shared this kind of dark but funny fable with his son about an unemployed man who thought hell was a place with absolutely no work, only to eventually realize he was already living in it. So the crucial takeaway is this: if you view work merely as a duty or a punishment, your life becomes hell. But if you can shift your perspective and view work as a privilege and a pleasure, life becomes heaven. Your attitude entirely dictates your reality.
He really drove this home with the famous analogy of the 3 stonemasons. Picture this. All 3 guys are doing the exact same grueling job. You ask the first one what he's doing, and he says he's just chiseling stone so he can go home. To him, work is just a punishment. The second guy says he's working to feed his family, so work is a necessary burden. But the third mason, he proudly points at his stone and says, "I am making a piece of art." It is the exact same task, but that third mason finds deep meaning and true joy in it.
Which brings us nicely to section 3, failure, hardship, and resilience.
Because look, even if you absolutely love your work, you are going to get knocked down, that's for sure. But Rockefeller believed hardship wasn't just this inevitable annoyance. It was deliberately required to build a strong character. He firmly noted that hardship builds a luxurious character, not wealthy blood. When Rockefeller was just a young, very poor boy, he was actually excluded from a school photograph because the photographer flat out told him his clothes were too shabby. And instead of letting that break him, that humiliation became his ultimate fuel. He literally clenched his fists and swore he would one day become the richest man in the world. He used that very real pain to forge absolute resilience. He actually formalized this whole concept into a real-life success equation that he taught his son. Dream plus failure plus challenge equals success. He drew massive inspiration from Thomas Edison for this, who, as we know, famously failed 10,000 times before finally inventing the light bulb. Rockefeller taught that failure is absolutely nothing to be feared. It's really just a vital testing ground. You dream, you fail, you face the challenge head-on, and that is what actually produces the success. To really anchor this idea, he pointed to what he saw as the ultimate example of the indomitable spirit, Abraham Lincoln. Rockefeller held a deep, deep admiration for Lincoln. He highlighted how Lincoln was driven from his home, suffered through extreme poverty, totally failed in business, and lost multiple political elections, yet he never gave up. Rockefeller wrote to his son that unless you give up, you simply will not be beaten.
Okay, let's shift gears now into section 4, the battlefield of business.
This relentless internal mindset we've been talking about, it translates perfectly into external execution. Make no mistake, Rockefeller did not view the corporate world as some friendly, collaborative gathering. He viewed it as a literal jungle, where you must eat or be eaten. And that brings us to a highly provocative question. Is greed inherently evil? Throughout his life, many critics attacked Rockefeller for his ultra-aggressive expansion, quickly labeling him as ruthless and greedy.
But interestingly, Rockefeller completely leaned into it. He wrote, "Destiny must be created by oneself, and what one really wants must be obtained by every means." He objectively viewed the desire for profit and monopoly not as some moral failing, but as an honest evolutionary fuel for ambition. In his eyes, ambition, what his critics called greed, was the fundamental driver for all human progress.
We see this battlefield mentality perfectly illustrated in the infamous pipeline war with a competitor named Benson. It's a crazy story. On day one, Benson starts building this massive 110-mile pipeline to bypass Rockefeller's trains. By month 3, Rockefeller strategically buys up the land right in Benson's path to block him. But Benson is smart, right? So by month 5, he secures detours and just keeps building anyway. Honestly, it looked like Rockefeller was actually going to lose his market share here.
But then, Rockefeller executed this absolutely brilliant final move. His strategy was simple: discover the opponent's weakness and strike hard. Rockefeller realized that Benson needed wooden barrels to actually store the oil coming out of that massive pipe. So, Rockefeller secretly bought up every single oil container from all the local manufacturers. Every single one. When Benson's pipeline finally opened, he had absolutely nowhere to put the oil. He bled out crude right into the wilderness and was forced to completely surrender in under a year. Just a total masterclass in strategic business warfare.
Finally, we reach Section 5, Wealth, Ethics, and Legacy.
So what was all this aggressive conquering actually for? As he aged, Rockefeller's focus heavily shifted from those cutthroat battlefield tactics to his ultimate goal of making a lasting, positive impact on the world. He clarified his core philosophy with this really key distinction. He said, "The love of money is the root of all evil, not money itself." As a deeply religious man, he framed money totally neutrally. To him, it was just a tool. He compared wealth to fire. If you worship fire, it's incredibly dangerous and will eventually burn you. But if you use it correctly, you can cook food, warm your family, and light up the dark. Money is really just an amplifier of the person holding it.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why having a purpose is so absolutely vital. Rockefeller compared a person who has money but lacks vision to a yacht without an engine. You might look great sitting there on the water, but you are totally adrift. You're just going to float wherever the current takes you, eventually crashing right into the rocks. But establishing a clear purpose, that is what turns on the engine. It propels you exactly where you want to go, allowing you to use your wealth effectively.
And Rockefeller's engine drove him to this absolutely staggering number, $500 million. That is the amount of his own personal wealth that he donated to charities, used to build schools, found universities, and fund groundbreaking medical research. He taught his son that ultimately, a man's reputation is his most valuable currency. You can absolutely conquer the business world, but true greatness is found in how you use those tools to elevate society.
We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today, from finding heaven in your daily work to viewing failures as essential stepping stones and understanding money simply as a tool for a much greater purpose. But I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder based on everything we've just unpacked together. Are you waiting for luck, or are you actively planning it? Take these lessons from the architect of destiny himself, turn on your engine, and go build your own empire. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you next time.